Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we're going to be diving back into the battle I had against the Blood Angels nearly a week ago. So I wanted you guys to kind of get a better idea of how this battle went down and how to position your army accordingly to fight the Blood Angels. Now, Blood Angels are a very competitive army right now, and they have a new codex on the way, and several of the units in that new codex are looking fiercer than ever. But I have some good news for you guys. For the most part, the Blood Angels are probably going to play exactly the same. And if I know GW, if the codex is overturned, or overtuned, I should say, then they're probably going to be in for some nerfs. And that hasn't gone well for some of the last few armies that have had new codexes, including Chaos Space Marines, which are now sadly one of the lowest win rate armies after the nerfs. And it was ironic because they were once one of the highest. Having said that, combat armies are going to be better in Pry Nexus, without a doubt, and Blood Angels are going to be very strong, and some of the rules I have been seeing for them are pretty good for the new codex anyway. So I will talk about that later on in the video, but first, let's go ahead and do a quick recap into the deployment and the terrain setup that we had in my last Blood Angels game, so I can get into the details with you guys and that you guys are all reacquainted. So this is the sweeping engagement Pry Nexus deployment, and I think this is terrain setup 2 if I'm not mistaken. Now I really like terrain setup 2. I think this is one of the best terrain setups for the Eldar, even though we have this kind of sweeping engagement deployment, just because of all the different line of sight lanes that we get, and we get a big piece of we basically get a huge L-shaped ruin right here in the bigger side of our deployment zone, which is really helpful for hiding a lot of our bigger tanks. And we have a few other places that are really nifty to hide small units of aspects who are very fast. So I do really like this terrain layout immensely. And it's actually one that's very popular with my group as well, so we tend to play on this quite a bit. But a lot of players have, kind of come out and said, well, this deployment's really, better for melee armies because of the proximity of the closest to closest deployment zone, distance, which between here, this spot right here, and here is only 18 inches, which puts, a unit with jump packs in range of your units to charge pretty easily if they're deployed right here. Of course, we're not going to just deploy right here unless we have something that can guaranteed kill our opponent's units. So anyway, this is the kind of setup that we had in our game, and I want to refresh you guys on the deployment. I went over this in my last video, but I'm just going to quickly go over it again. Now, as for my opponent's army, everything's labeled: Jump Intercessors, Death Company with Lamardis, Land Raider Redeemer, Predator Annihilator, Intercessors, Impulsor, Death Company with Asterath, Death Company with nothing, and of course Jump Intercessors. He had a unit of Jump Intercessors in reserve, and he also had a group of Inceptors in reserve. For our army, we have 2 units of Striking Scorpions. Now I deployed them out like this. There's a reason for that, and I'll go into it in a second, but they're out like that. Swooping Hawks are on the left flank. Autarch Wayleapers back here, of course. We have the Wind Riders right here with the Farseer and Warlock Skyrunners. We have 2 Falcons filled with Fire Dragons, a Solitaire for that good heroic intervention and fights first. We have Storm Guardians here posted up so that they cannot be assaulted. Kind of went over that in the last video, but I will go over it again just for posterity's sake. 3 Shroud Runners, Warp Spiders tucked in here where they can't really be, threatened on turn 1, and we have a Falcon with Fuegan inside as well, and Fire Dragons, of course. So, Striking Scorpions, this might seem like a very aggressive deployment, but this is exactly how we have to deploy against a melee army. The reason being is melee armies have usually not that much shooting, or their shooting is very close range, which means they need to move up to be able to shoot. This particular army only had 1 or 2 really good shooting units, and that is, of course, the Land Raider Redeemer and the Predator. Predator's not going to have line of sight to them, so that's not a bother. The only thing that is going to have line of sight is the Redeemer, and I kind of had a plan for the Redeemer, which, either if I went first or second, I ended up going first in this game, as I told you guys. So the Land Raider Redeemer was tied up in combat. So that plan succeeded. But if I didn't get first turn, then I would have been able to use this Striking Scorpion squad to bait the Land Raider Redeemer here, and then I would have been able to Phantasm. Now, I know I kind of drew this a little weird, but these guys are actually a little more to the left than they should have been. I basically set it up in such a way as, a 2 on Phantasm would have cleared them across the ruin. And that's basically how it is with 28mm models. You can't, basically auto Phantasm usually unless you put yourself way out of position. So I was just banking on that too. But I had that in my mind as well. Now, the other thing that this has as an advantage, I should say, is deploying these Striking Scorpions up here, is that if I do go first, of course, I can attack and either tie up or eliminate some threats early. If I don't go first, then it's going to force my opponent's units to engage them. Now, the one thing Blood Angels love to do if they go first is they like to stage all of their units behind line of sight blocking terrain so that you can then, of course, not shoot them, and then in the following turn they're going to assault you in mass. This is exactly what my opponent is staging to do. Jump Intercessors, Death Company, Death Company, Death Company. He wants to put all these Death Company right up here, right? He wants to move here, he wants to move here, right? Boom, boom, and just make sure that he can charge me the next turn with his whole list. That's the idea. Putting the Striking Scorpions here forces my opponent to think twice about that. Because if he does that, right, if he stages, then he's going to leave his models open to retaliation. Again, Striking Scorpions, only 65 points. They're not that expensive. I'm going to be able to out-trade him after that if he reveals Death Company, and even Jump Intercessors is a positive trade if they trade for Scorpions. So that was the idea of putting the Striking Scorpions out there. Now, with Blood Angels, you have to be aggressive. You have to force them to make tough choices about what they want to assault and where they want to assault them. And you have to position your units in such a way that if your opponent does assault your units, they're out in the open and you can make an even trade or a positive trade. The Eldar are a very good trading army because they are very, they have a lot of damage for the points you pay for their units. For example, Fire Dragons, 5 Fire Dragons is 5 Meltaguns essentially. And 5 Meltaguns will, on average, kill about 4 Death Company Marines. And sometimes 5. Several times, in the past, I've killed 5 Marines with 5 Fire Dragons. Very possible with a good roll. However, most of the time you're going to kill 4 with that reroll to hit and wound. That's still fantastic. They're still trading up against Death Company for that cost. Wind Riders. Very good at trading with the same kind of infantry. They do a lot of damage. So, anyway. Now, here's how first turn went. I actually did get the first turn. And what I did basically is I just went full on aggro on my opponent. Striking Scorpions went in here, killed about 4 Jump Intercessors, and tied them up in combat. So now the Jump Intercessors are gonzo. These Striking Scorpions went up here to the Land Raider Redeemer, tied it up in combat. Now, you're wondering probably why it didn't Overwatch, and simply because, just like I stated in the last video, I moved up behind this ruined wall right here. And in case you guys don't know, usually in tournament, settings or, even competitive settings, the bottom story is considered opaque, so you cannot see the opponent's units behind this. So I moved up, he couldn't see me, and then once I had charged in, it was too late to Overwatch because he was engaged. Big guns never tire does not work outside of the controlling player's shooting phase. So he could not actually shoot me with big guns never tire on Overwatch. My Warp Spiders moved up here behind this wall right here, and he had a Calidus Assassin infiltrated up there. The goal was, of course, to get the Calidus Assassin to either just, stay there for fights first or, position it to score an objective or something like that. But the Warp Spiders made short work of it and then went on and were basically in range to overwatch any of these units if they decided to move, which is awesome because Warp Spiders have some pretty good overwatch. Falcons kind of positioned up a little bit closer to these ruin walls here, so they'd be in a better position to attack with fire dragons and stuff like that. Wind Riders moved over, and Shroud Runners moved over here with the scout move and their normal move. I think the Shroud Runners went ahead and shot at the Death Company, killed one of them, which is, actually really good. Being able to kill one with scatter lasers, that was, a little bit of a hooray moment, so to speak. And the Wind Riders moved into position here. Now, the reason why the Wind Riders moved into position down here behind this ruin wall is simply because I knew that once this Land Raider Redeemer came out, he's going to do one or two things, basically. Either he was going to fall back with the Redeemer and keep the Blade Guard inside, or he was going to disembark the Blade Guard behind it right here, then fall back, then use the Blade Guard to kill the Striking Scorpions. Now, if he does this, though, the Wind Riders are going to move up and just absolutely blast the Blade Guard. The Shroud Runners are still going to be alive, and the Blade Guard are going to be probably dead because I'm going to hit them with lethal hits, first of all, with Shroud Runners. They're going to shoot. Wind Riders are going to shoot. And the Blade Guard are strong, don't get me wrong, but they're probably not going to be able to make that many saves. And if they're right here, they're not in cover. That's the other thing, right? They kill Striking Scorpions here. They're not in cover. They're out in the open. And that means I'm going to be forcing 4-ups. So their invul is not going to be doing anything. They're just going to be taking a bunch of damage. Even if I don't kill every single last model in that unit, if I kill most of the unit, then it's an ineffective squad at that point, right? So that was the goal. Now, that didn't happen that way because my opponent didn't disembark the Blade Guard. He just fell back, and he actually used a different unit to kill the Scorpions. But, that's how it goes sometimes. You have to force your opponent to make hard choices. Storm Guardians were just posted up here. They were happy to sit on the home objective and just sit there for now and block him from being able to assault from this angle. So you see all these units right here that would normally just shoot forward are now going to be a little bit stuck because they're not going to be able to make those long charges. It's actually impossible. Even a roll of a 12-inch charge would not be able to assault these guys because of the 1-inch rule. If you guys are not aware of this, it's essentially this. If your opponent cannot fit its base right in between the wall and your model, then it cannot be deployed there. And of course, on the other side of the wall, they're outside of engagement range. So they can't charge. AKA, charge fails, your opponent's out of position, and you can take advantage of that. Swooping Hawks just moved forward and did, I believe, extend enemy battle lines, where, you just capture an objective in no man's land and call it a day. They scored on that. And I want to say I scored on Assassinate as well, but again, my memory's foggy about that. It may have been something that I had to discard. It may have been Bring It Down, actually, and I think I either discarded it or just kept it for another turn. It's been a little bit since I played the game, so I can't exactly remember what the secondary was. Anyway, so this was my first turn, and this was my opponent's response, and I think this is the important part about this video. I ended up winning this game by a pretty large margin at the end of turn 5, but I'm going to go ahead and switch to the editor really quick and show you guys this. I know it's a little bit more blurry, but I'm just going to quickly show you guys what happened. Okay, so hopefully this is you can still see this and all that. Now, basically what happened here is there a way I can change color here? Yes, will be black. Okay. Or red. We'll pick red. Okay. So, Striking Scorpions engaged with the Land Raider. I think they did about 2 damage to it on charge, which was miraculous, but, they got some damage on it. So what he did during his turn is he decided that he was going to simply move the Land Raider Redeemer over here and fall back. That's what he did. So Blood Angels do have a fallback and charge stratagem, but it's a land raider, so it couldn't shoot. So it was basically, he just moved it out of the way. He wanted to make sure that it was still alive, and it took up this space right here, so I couldn't shoot it, which was, I think, probably the more conservative move, and it was probably a better move in the long run. He didn't want to risk going through the striking scorpions and, kind of incurring a desperate escape test, because that would have been, potentially game losing, right? If he rolls out one, it's game over. Right? Losing a land raider to that is just awful. And then having battle shocked, you know, blade guard veterans right there is probably one of the worst things that you can do. So he instead moved around them. And from there, these three units, jump intercessors, go right here. Death Company move over here. And I probably should have chosen to shoot this Death Company unit, but I didn't, because I saved it for this squad with Astarath. Now, again, I don't know whether that was the best decision. Maybe it would have been better to just go for this Death Company so that they would be unable to fully kill the Scorpions. But I kind of felt like maybe Lamartez's unit could do it, and at that point I had to decide the Overwatch, because he moved this unit. Well, he didn't move this unit first, essentially, right? So he actually chose to move this unit with Astarath right here into this position, tucked in this corner. Now, I actually didn't think this was a good move on his part, just because I knew I had Fire Dragons and Fuegan in here that could kind of take him out. But the way he was thinking about it was, this unit really had nowhere to go, right? If it goes in the center, it dies to Wind Riders. If it goes over here, it dies to Fire Dragons. If it goes here to stage for the next turn, then it's good for this turn, so to speak, but it's probably going to just die later, right? So he chose to go here and then potentially be able to kill things on the other side. He really wanted to kill these Wind Riders. That was his goal with these guys. And at the very least, he told me that he would probably survive whatever came out of the, Falcon, which joke's on him. He didn't, but he was thinking that he could survive that. But anyway, that's why he moved right there. Okay. So this unit with Lamartez went over here and actually charged the Swooping Hawks. They got a good charge against them, and they wiped them out, so they're dead. Scorpions beat the Intercessors in the assault phase, and yeah, they're dead now, and the Scorpions are just chilling right there. These Scorpions are wiped out by the Death Company right here. They come over here, they shoot pistols, they charge them, they wipe them out completely, and then the Death Company, of course, are in the open. Which, again, it was basically my opponent having to choose which unit was going to be out in the open, and it just happened that this Jump Intercessor unit was not going to be in... Well, it may have been in range of this unit, but it would have been a risky charge, and he decided he needed to score. I think he actually got extend as well, and that's why he needed to move up there. But anyway, he could have gotten it with Lamartez too, but the fact of the matter was, he didn't know if he was going to make his charge. He wanted to make sure he could score on that secondary. Okay, so Scorpions are wiped out. That's fine. Now his unit of Death Company is exposed. But you can kind of see why my opponent is in such a tricky position from the beginning of the game. That's because I positioned my units in such a way that he was actually unable to make any good trades, right? Intercessors, Impulsor, Predator kind of backed up a little bit. They all shot the Warp Spiders and killed them. Warp Spider's dead. Jump Intercessors move here, and that's pretty much it. That was his first turn. It didn't really go as expected for him. Oh, one more thing. Sorry. He did lose on Overwatch 3 of these guys, and that was a good Overwatch. Now, he expected the Overwatch, but he thought that the 6-up Feel No Pains and the, 3-up armor saves would negate most of the Overwatch from the Warp Spiders. He was a little bit wrong. I did spike. I got actually 6 devastating wounds, which typically you only get about 3, but I rolled lucky on it. And the rest of the saves just, eliminated 3 guys. So it was funny, the dev wounds, he actually made 2 of the feel no pains there. So he only lost 2 to the dev wounds, and then the rest of the warp spiders killed this last guy. So, pretty good Overwatch for me. He moves here with 3 models, and he's now thinking it's definitely the unit's definitely going to die, but he was kind of also planning on just leaving this side of the board to me and just focusing right here, right, with his other units. It was this point in the game also that my opponent was really confused about what to do. And it just kind of shows you that, yeah, he's not the most, he's not a pro player or anything like that, right? But if you can force a Blood Angels player to make really hard decisions about what they need to kill and what they need to ignore and how they need to position their troops, if you go on the if you go on the offense, they're not going to be able to outtrade you. No way. If you build your army right, they're just not going to be able to do it. Some Eldar builds, they're still going to be able to do it. If you have a big Wraith brick, for example, Wraith bricks, they're tough, but they do not trade well against Blood Angels at all. If you give your opponent the initiative, they will destroy your Wraiths very easily. Okay. So moving on to the next turn, it is now my turn again. And remember, the Shroud Runners are still alive. I actually moved the Shroud Runners up here onto this middle objective in a way to where they kind of blocked off a little bit, but they're kind of at an angle here so that my opponent would not be able to move his Land Raider, which is now, or Overwatch with his Land Raider, which is now over here. So I was just out of line of sight behind this wall, kind of blocking like this. They tagged this unit of Death Company, and then the Wind Riders moved up about here and shot him to death. And I moved just enough to get my guys in range and wiped out this unit of Death Company. So they're no longer an issue. Forgot Khalid's assassin got wiped out by Warp Spiders earlier. Over here, Fire Dragons come out here. They, of course, move up. Disembark 3, move up. Falcon moves a little bit out here to support. Fire Dragons and Falcon take out Astorath and the rest of the Death Company. Fuegan gets out, and this is another thing my opponent didn't expect. Fuegan to come out and just eliminate the Jump Intercessors altogether. I told him at the beginning of the game there were 2 different units, but I guess he wasn't expecting the combat ability of Fuegan. So Fuegan kills them, takes the objective. Going to the other side of the battlefield, remember I have 2 units of Fire Dragons in here. So I swing this Falcon, which is now in this position, over here. Fire Dragons get out. And Fire Dragons and Falcon eliminate Lamarda's unit. And the cool thing about this is they were in Melter range. And Lamartez's -1 damage really didn't come into play because I was basically auto-killing every single Marine anyway. So between the Fire Dragons and the Falcon, they were able to kill most of them, except Big Boy himself, Lamartez. And then the Solitaire was actually able to clean up. So the Solitaire went up there, cleaned up, and perched himself on the objective right there. Storm Guardians, I decided to just leave there because they really weren't going to do any good. And that's this Falcon kind of positioned up here because I was going to get ready for whatever came out, Blade Guard or Land Raider Redeemer to come around the corner there and just, set up in the middle. And again, here's the thing, guys, and I've said this probably so many times on this channel, but it's really important to know. If you see your opponent doing this kind of thing where they set up in the middle right here, just ignore them. Just ignore this thing. Try to delay it and then ignore it because it's a big chunk of points, a lot of characters in there. You're probably not going to kill it until you've killed the rest of his army. So that was the goal. My goal going into this game was wipe out all these units by out trading them and then focus on the big stuff later in the game. Okay. Oh, wait. Striking Scorpions are still alive. I forgot about that. They're they're there. So, what do the Striking Scorpions do? Well, I decided to just leave them over here. So I moved them up here and just kind of sat there. And the reason for this is because I thought, if I get something that allows me to score an objective over here or something like that, I already have a unit there. So I'm just going to go for it, right? And that was basically it. Okay, so that's what happens there. And I think that's the end of my turn. Am I forgetting anything? No. Yeah, that's the end of my turn. Now his turn comes next, and I mean, at this point of the game, a lot of his forces are dead. He's not very confident that he can win the game, but he's a good guy, so he keeps playing. The one thing I will say about this player, this buddy of mine, is he's not a quitter. He always plays to the end, and he just always tries his best. So even though he's doing a little bit of complaining here and there, saying, "Oh, I don't think I can win this. This is looking bad," he still played it out, which was very honorable. So kudos. Okay, so his turn comes along. He brings in his reinforcements, and he initially wants to go for the Autarch Wayleaper back here because I do leave this spot open with a 3-inch deep strike. There's nothing I can really do to stop it. I'm not going to keep my whole army back just to stop one unit of Inceptors, right? However, this is why I love the Phoenix Gem, because I have a Phoenix Gem, and immediately when he tries to go over here, I just tell him this. I have the Phoenix Gem. On a 2-up, I get a Resurrect. And at that point, you know what he says to me? Well, can't go back there. And instead, he's trying to angle first on the Solitaire. He's thinking like maybe I can go here and kill the Solitaire. But then he's like, I tell him that it has a 3-up invul save, and yeah, you'll probably still kill it with the 3. But he's thinking, oh, I don't know, like, you have a Fate dice, you do this. I don't know. That's not a guarantee, kind of, I guess, in his mind. He could have easily probably killed it with an Oath of Moment. He did have the plasma guns, so technically, I guess he could have overcharged them and really, just punched through a lot of damage on it. But instead, he decided to actually kill this unit of Scorpions up here and just play it more safe. So he dropped back here and shot at the Scorpions, killed them. Done. The unit of jump intercessors he had in reserve basically came in, and they came in right about here behind this terrain, and he was just going to keep them there and possibly threaten this objective later on. The Redeemer, of course, moved up here and posted up and shot at the Shroud Runners and killed them. Boom, Shroud Runners dead. Which, I knew it was going to happen. It's just what I was doing by this is I was actually blocking him from making the full movement around, so he could be like right here and actually shoot at my Wind Rider. So he came up to about, he was able to come up to about here, which actually saved my Wind Riders from being shot with the, two things, the cannons. And I had pre-measured this beforehand. I know this is a little bit not to scale, but I had pre-measured it so that, with the pivot, the 2-inch pivot, he wouldn't have been able to make it the full distance, be able to shoot 18 inches like, from here. So I think I'm right on this, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, so like he wasn't able to do it. He would have been able to do it from here about, but I was able to block him from to about here with the Shroud Runners. I think they were probably like right here. Something like that. But anyway. Okay, and we had both agreed that I basically, and this is really important if you're playing games with people, you state your intentions with the units, your screening units, and you're like, I'm putting this unit here so that your unit cannot get range on my Wind Rider unit back here. And, then that's when you do the testing, you do the pre-measuring stuff beforehand to make sure that that's, what you can do. And then once it's decided between two players, you go forward with that information. So, yeah, anyway. All right, so, at this point in the game, it's not looking good for my opponent. My opponent is, honestly, he's scoring objective points still with the intercessors back here, but he's having trouble holding everything else because I'm just not making it easy for him, right? So my turn comes around, and of course, Falcon goes on this objective right here, just takes the objective. I know that this Predator is not going to be able to make all the way over here and shoot it, so Falcon goes up here. Fuegan actually takes the offensive onto this unit right here and kills them, the jump intercessors, and just kind of posts up. I know that's kind of risky, but remember, Fuegan has a revive, so I wasn't too worried about that. So Fuegan killed them. The fire dragons that were right here kind of just posted up here. And again, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to bait my opponent into bringing out the Blade Guard veterans over here or over here. I don't want his Blade Guard veteran sitting on an objective. I want to force him to actually fight. And if he doesn't fight, then it also, then he just sits there and I take the rest of the field, right? Now, the Inceptors up here, I decided to actually just swing my Solitaire up there, kill them, easy money. He blitzed too, so he was able to wipe all of them out. The Falcon that was right over here just parked itself on this center objective, no problem. Fire Dragons moved right here. Or I may have actually moved them behind this wall, actually, now that I think about it. Yes, yeah, they're right here. And this thing, I know there was a Land Raider right here, but if I move out there, I get overwatched, right? So the only thing I could really do is try my best to stay outside of the 18 of the Redeemer and just shoot it with Wind Riders. They didn't do that much damage, so, that was that. But I peeked my Falcon over here and tried to take some shots at it just to get it a little bit damaged. He used, popped smoke, did all of his defensive buffs. I think I dealt maybe another 4 damage to it, maybe 6. I can't exactly remember, but it wasn't nearly enough to kill it, so I just damaged it and stuff like that, and that was it. And that's really all I could do at that point. Now, what I was hoping at this point, because remember he's back here, was that if he moves up, he can dump his Blade Guard veterans out, and yes, his Blade Guard will absolutely wreck this unit of Storm Guardians, but he's not going to be able to get to this objective, really. That was my goal, because remember, I also have the Falcon posted up right here that's peeking in between these, so Falcon is now right here, pretty much. So he can't go into the wall. He has to basically go around, and he hits the Falcon beforehand. So the Falcon's actually blocking the Storm Guardians from getting charged. So he's going to have to charge the Falcon, kill that, and he's just not going to be able to get to this objective. I make it very hard for him to do so. And then, of course, at that point, Fire Dragons come out, Storm Guardians are here. I have a Falcon here. I can converge on him and destroy him, and then basically just guarantee the win, right? So at this point in the game, his turn comes back around, and he really can't do much. He doesn't really have any reserve units left or anything like that. He has a Predator right here. I think he did try to move it out and get an angle on this Falcon, but he just couldn't because of the way the terrain was set up and stuff. He couldn't get line of sight. The Redeemer, it could have gone and moved somewhere, but it didn't really have any good targets. The Blade Guard, again, like I said, would have had to charge the Falcon. So at this point, he did continue to play. We played out the rest of the game, but it just wasn't anything to write home about, and it was basically a pretty large victory for the Eldar. Okay. Now, what I will say is, what would have happened if my opponent went first? Because at the end of the game, he was pretty adamant that if he had gone first, it would have been a way closer game. I think it would have been closer, but I still think it would have ended up, and this is not me trying to be, some sort of like, oh, I'm the best player, not at all. I'm actually probably just slightly above average in, the wider scheme of the competitive 40K community. Basically, I just think that the Eldar, when built a certain way, just out-trade these assault-style armies. Right? Fire Dragons are super efficient into stuff that Blood Angels can bring. super efficient into stuff that Space Wolves can bring. A lot of players, bring up Thunderwolf Cavalry. Well, point for point, Fire Dragons cost half of the cost that, Thunderwolf Cav do, and they can probably kill about 2 Thunderwolves per shooting. And that's if you roll just completely average, and they roll completely average with like nothing outside of that, like not accounting for Falcons, not accounting for anything. So yeah, Fire Dragons can very easily trade up with Thunderwolves, and they can almost kill. Yeah, they can almost kill their points were just in a single shooting phase, but not quite. They're about 1 Thunderwolf off of being able to do that. But that's why the Falcon's there, right? To kind of murder the rest of the unit. So if you find yourself playing against somebody who's running like 18 Thunderwolves, and you're just like, man, like this guy, I can't do anything against this guy. Consider running a bunch of Fire Dragons. Honestly, they do some severely good work against Thunderwolf Cav. And, I'm even thinking of lists. Like, I love the Falcons. I think that's the most efficient way to run Fire Dragons. But I'm even thinking about lists with like triple Wave Serpent and triple 10-man Fire Dragon units just for fun, and just seeing how good that is into a lot of the like meta kind of Space Marine armies that have like a bunch of Terminators or a bunch of like really high armor, you know, big stuff. And I think it would do pretty good. And you know, just food for thought. I don't know. Just think about it a little bit. I know Falcons are really strong and stuff like that, but 10 Fire Dragons and a Wave Serpent might also be really good at killing Thunderwolves and stuff like that. I mean, think about it for a second. Like 10 Fire Dragons shooting at Thunderwolf Cavalry. I believe you kill about 4 of them on average with the rerolls, and my math might be a little bit off on that, but you're wounding on 3 plus, I believe. So yeah, you kill 3 or 4 of them, and that's like half the unit, right? And the Wave Serpent shoots, you get a deal some mortal wounds, stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's a interesting strategy to employ. Is instead of Falcons, with 5-man Fire Dragons, you got the classic 10-man Fire Dragon unit with a Wave Serpent. But anyway, so I think Eldar, if you build your army right, if you position correctly, they have a very good matchup into these melee armies. And again, is my opponent the greatest Blood Angel player in the world? Of course not, right? And by the way, anybody watching this video outside of like maybe 1 or 2 people that might have won an Eldar GT or won a GT with the Aeldari, or with Blood Angels for that matter, like 99% of the players out there are also just going to be, they may be good, but you know they're not going to be some like super ultra competitive guys at your local game shop. And I think even more so with the new Blood Angels codex that's coming out, there's going to be a lot of new interest in Blood Angels. A lot of people are going to pick them up and start playing them again. My buddy was really excited about all the new releases too when I talked to him last about Blood Angels. He's definitely going to get some more games in with them, alter and kind of switch up his strategy a little bit. He's definitely talking about Mephiston, which is a little bit concerning, but I'll go into the strategy about dealing with him in a second. And yeah, honestly, I think, if you play the Eldar in this way that I describe here, you're going to have a much better chance dealing with Blood Angels than you are if you're going to play them in the traditional shooting sense where they just kind of stick back in your deployment zone and they shoot. Here's the thing about the Eldar now, guys. You got to position, you got to move forward, you got to keep moving. That's what they do. The beginning of the edition, I think, spoiled a lot of players into thinking that we could kind of just sit back and shoot our opponents to death and not like worry about, movement stuff. We just basically kill the enemy army and then we just move wherever we want. You can't do that anymore, right? You got to learn how to stage. So, and a lot of the staging that I'm talking about here is reliant on units like Striking Scorpions being able to bait opponents out. Alrighty, so having kind of talked about that stuff, I do want to show you guys some of the new Blood Angels stuff on the GW website. And I'm just going to go over this briefly because I'm an Eldar player, not a Space Marine player. I've never liked Space Marines or the gosh, or the many releases that they get. But here they are. Blood Angels Army Set, right? Revealed with the Codex. Now, first of all, I just want to say this looks like a pretty standard Blood Angels force. They're all painted Death Company, so that means you can probably run them as both. Is what I'm guessing. Could either run them as the normal jump pack guys, the intercessors, or as Death Company Marines. You got I think this is the Brutalis. You got Astorat's new model as well, and you got Lamartis. One thing I want to say is I think Lamartis looks way stupider than he used to. I think his old model was better. Sorry, guys. I think I mean, this kind of looks like a ball gag, honestly. I don't know. I don't know really what they were thinking with that. I mean, maybe it's just the way it's painted, but oh, I don't like it. Not a fan. I mean, he basically just looks like a basic chaplain to me now. Like, this should have just been a chaplain, right? Like, he doesn't look like... Lamarta's, I think, looked way cooler. Astorath, he looks a little bit better, I think, but he's very similar to what there was before. I know that GW is not spending a whole lot of time on these resculpts. They're just kind of making them very similar, but in plastic, which is totally fine. You know, they don't have to do that. They don't have to make it, like, super, you know, different, but, you know, I think this is a good model still. Still way better than... Honestly, I would be disappointed and embarrassed if I was a Blood Angels player. Like, I would keep my old Lamarta's model, honestly. Just put them on this, like, maybe just, yeah, not my thing. Then again, I don't really like Marines or the aesthetic of Space Marines, so. Yeah, I think Astorath is cool. And I just don't like Space Marine models. But, you know, I think the stupidest part about Blood Angels is they all have the vampire fangs. Like, I get that's like part of their like lore and stuff. But I just think it looks kind of silly, to be honest. I don't know. But that's just me. So the set looks pretty good. Now, what I want to say is, when I mean good, I don't mean looking good. I mean like it's good value, I think, for what you're gonna get. But we'll see what the prices are. Upgrade Sprue, Brutalis Dreadnought, all that stuff. Comes with the Codex, of course, and all that stuff, which is going to be nice for people for the first, you know, well, basically people who love the lore and stuff of the Blood Angels. Now, the one thing I wanted to talk about is some of the new rules that I've seen so far. I'm not fully up to date on them, but the one model I do want to talk about is Mephiston. And Mephiston is going to be a very tough character to deal with now. He was not that good before, and now he's going to be a lone op. He's going to have, I think, a 4+ feel no pain. He's going to have toughness 5, probably a 4-up invul save, a 2-up armor save. He's going to be a beast, right? So the only real way to kill this guy is going to be with something like Fire Dragons. And again, I know that seems really... it's like hit or miss, right? But if they're within melter range and, you know, you shoot 5 shots off, you hit, you know, you get 4 wounds through, which is actually what you should get, probably about 4, because of the Exarch's, you know, greater strength on the fire pike. He's going to miss 2 invul saves, and then you're going to put, you know, 2 shots in at melt to 3, and that's going to do an automatic 6 damage, and then, you know, whatever the 2d6 is. So let's say 7. So you're going to get 13 wounds on him. And at 5-up feel no pain, he probably should fail, I'd say, about 4 of those. Or no, sorry. He's going to pass about 4 of those. So he's going to, 9 wounds is going to go through. And I think that's enough to kill him, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, 5 fire dragons have a pretty good chance of killing Mephiston, but yeah, I don't think he has 10 wounds. No way. I think he has less than that. I think he has like 8 wounds or something like that. He's tough, but he's not like that tough. So yeah, a squad of fire dragons can definitely bring him down, but he's a lone operative. He has fights first, base, so he's going to be really hard to deal with. So, anyway. However, I will say this, a lot of players might think that the new Blood Angels Codex is going to kind of invalidate, the new recent video I made. Some stuff might be different, but I think for the most part, the rules and the strategies that the Blood Angels are going to use are going to essentially be the same. You're going to fight the same exact army with just different points and different stratagems, perhaps. But I think most of the stuff is going to remain the same. So, they might have different detachments and stuff like that. That's another wild card. We'll have to just see what the Codex brings. But for the most part, I think they're going to play largely the same. So that is kind of a positive thing as well. You don't need to like fully change like the way you're running your army to, fight the new Blood Angels. And yeah, all these codexes are coming out, and I'm really hoping that the Eldar Codex comes out. I'm really hoping for new Eldar models. We need it. Do Blood Angels need all these, new models? Well, maybe a couple of them, like the old ones, the old metal ones. But for the most part, no. I personally don't think so. I think Space Marine factions have enough. Let's give some love to the Xenos. I don't think the Xenos have had much love, for a while. And yeah, I think the Eldar are due for some love finally. It's been since basically 2006, and in some cases, like with Warp Spiders and the Viper, you know, a lot earlier than that. So yeah, I think we deserve some new stuff soon. All right, everybody. I am going to end today's video, but I want to let you guys know that I'm very thankful for, you guys watching and you guys, supporting the channel and all that. I am going to have some more content out later this week covering the Wraith Knight. We're going to look at the Wraith Knight once again. We're going to kind of check in and see how the Wraith Knight's doing. Probably not that good, but I want to run him in a game and see, if I can kind of make him work with a certain build. So we're going to do a video on that. And we're going to discuss the findings that, I've kind of come to understand about the Wraith Knight, and if it's any good or not, or if it's just trash, we'll see. And after that, after I make that video, I'm probably going to do a couple of videos with some, other channels. Exile Wargaming, I have a video coming out with him soon, so stay tuned with that. He's a very good Harlequin player that does a lot of Harlequin content and battle reports. You should check out his channel when you get the chance. Shout out to Exile Wargaming. And yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, we're going to have a few more videos coming out, and also for all you guys who are wondering how to support the channel, you can support the channel through my Patreon, which actually just has free trials. You don't even have to pay a single dime, and it still helps support the channel by having you guys join the Discord, which is a, Eldar Discord for, Eldar players and enthusiasts. We talk about strategies, tactics, and hobbying and stuff like that. It's a really cool place. There's almost zero negativity in there. It's not toxic, and of course it's an awesome little Discord that I'm a part of, and a lot of other very helpful players are a part of as well. So if you want to join up, it'd be awesome. You can ask me questions, you can ask other Eldar players questions, and I will leave the link for that in the description. You just have to sign up for a Patreon free trial and you will get the Discord link automatically. As for other ways to support the channel, I am an Amazon affiliate, and I do have a channel store page as well. So if you want to buy some discounted miniatures on Amazon, or you want to order some Eldar inspired apparel on the channel store page, I will leave those links in the description as well. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today's video. Have a good one. Peace out, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. See you later.